Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's January 9th. Today we celebrate an incredible woman, a true pioneer of Canada, and a writer and botanical illustrator as well. We learn about one of the most dedicated and famous bryologists. She helped establish the New York Botanical Garden. Today's Unearthed Words feature wonderful thoughts on the gardener's favorite winter reading material, seed catalogs. And we grow that garden library with a book that helps us garden through the back half of our lives. I'll talk about a garden item that will brighten up a corner in your cozy winter home. And then we'll wrap things up with the most charming, memorable, and heartbreaking story. And I'm so glad I stumbled on it, and I'm so excited to share it with you. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. Today's curated articles start out with a post about Japan's winter peonies. This totally caught my eye because it shows these peonies that are out in the snow and they're covered with these little straw tents. That's Japan's practice, apparently, with peonies. They hold them, they don't allow them to bloom in the spring and summer, and then they force them into blooming in the winter. If you're interested in checking out this amazing image of peonies in the snow in Japan, just search for Japan in the Facebook group for the show, and this post will pop right up. And then the next post that I wanted to share with you was from Flower Magazine. It's all about Andre Baranowski's brand new book called Garden Wild. This book is a survey of 12 breathtakingly beautiful gardens by award-winning photographer Andre Baranowski, whose eye for beauty will embolden readers the world over to embrace their inner instincts and create their own garden wild. This book came out in March of last year. It's absolutely gorgeous. There was one garden that featured transplanted stumps of slash pines from Florida and then incorporated mosses. It was just unbelievable. An ingenious idea. Now, if you'd like to check out these curated articles for yourself, you're in luck because I share all of it with the listener community for the show. It's a free Facebook group, totally free. It's called the Daily Gardener Community. So the next time you're in Facebook, just head on up to the search bar, type in Daily Gardener Community, and then the group will pop up. You can request to join, and I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of the Canadian English writer and botanical illustrator Catherine Parr Traill, who was born on this day in 1802. She was such an amazing woman. When Catherine was 30 years old, she was newly married, and she immigrated with her husband to Canada. Her family wasn't thrilled about any of this. They didn't approve of her choice of husband, and they certainly did not like the idea of her leaving England. Yet there she was in a boat on the river to Peterborough when she saw some cardinal flowers growing along the riverbank. Catherine was enthralled. The flowers in Canada were drastically different from those she'd grown up with, and her passion for wildflowers would help sustain her during the hardships of settling in the wilds of Canada. Catherine ultimately became known as the botanist of the backwoods, and although she never had formally studied botany, her accomplishments were really quite extraordinary. Catherine published a book called Canadian Wildflowers. Her niece took care of the illustrations. The book was helpful and beautiful. It was bound together in a large folio with colored plates. which is now regarded as a rare and valuable antique book. And one of the reasons that the book is now so rare is that back in the mid to late 1800s, the book was used to decorate homes. Young mothers and wives would tear out the beautiful, large, hand-colored plates and then frame them, probably displaying them in their parlors or bedrooms. Settling in the backwoods of Canada nearly broke Catherine's husband. Clearing the land was backbreaking work. The weather, especially during the winter, was incredibly harsh. And for the first 3 years, there was nothing to harvest. And although they were landowners, there was little labor around to help. One of their homes was destroyed in a fire, and another was seized by the bank to pay off debt. It was Catherine's general optimism and enthusiasm for the outdoors that carried her family through the hardest years. In all, Catherine spent 65 years in Canada. She raised 9 children, and experts agree that her best work was a book called Backwoods of Canada. It was intended to be a handbook for immigrating women. Catherine's tone was cheerful and direct. Her entire life, Catherine was incredibly observant and resourceful, and she pulled those skills together as she created the content for her writing. Despite all the terrible hardships that she and her family endured, Catherine was a prolific writer, and she always stayed sweet. Catherine died in her home at the age of 98. Today is the birthday of the famous bryologist Elizabeth Gertrude Knight Britton, who was born on this day in 1857. Elizabeth married the botanist Nathaniel Lord Britton. She was a teacher, and he was a professor of botany at Columbia University. Together, they helped create the New York Botanic Garden in the Bronx. Their primary source of inspiration was Kew Gardens in London. Elizabeth was a bryologist. Bryology is the study of mosses. The root bryos is a Greek verb meaning to swell, and it's the etymology of the word embryo. Bryology will be easier to remember if you think of the ability of moss to expand as it takes on water. Uniquely skilled for her time, Elizabeth Britton was intelligent, resourceful, and not afraid to speak her mind. The author Elizabeth Gilbert of Eat, Pray, Love used the real-life Elizabeth Gertrude Britton as the inspiration for the heroine of her novel in The Signature of All Things. In researching Britton, Gilbert read through many of her letters and correspondence. Gilbert said that in one of her letters, a fellow botanist had sent her a species of moss that he thought he'd discovered and wanted to name after himself. But Britton replied something like, "Do your research, my friend. I've got 20 of these in my cabinet already." Elizabeth Britton was also dedicated to conservation. In 1902, Elizabeth helped found the Wildflower Preservation Society of America. Today, the Beatrix Farrand Society purchased the Garland Farm under the mission to foster the art and science of horticulture and landscape design, with emphasis on the life and work of Beatrix Farrand. The goal was to preserve Garland Farm and Beatrix Farrand's final garden. Beatrix was a landscape gardener and landscape architect in the United States. And 49 years ago today, I Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye hit the #1 spot on the charts. It stayed there for 7 weeks. In Unearthed Words, today's Unearthed Words are all about seed catalogs. If you're a new gardener, welcome to the joy of curling up on the couch with a cup of coffee and a notebook and a seed catalog, or 2 or 3 or 10, however many you have. If you're a veteran gardener, you got this down. In either case, you'll enjoy these verses and poems on a gardener's favorite winter activity, going through seed catalogs. This first one's from the naturalist Hal Borland. There are 2 seasonal diversions that can ease the bite of any winter. One is the January thaw. The other is seed catalogs. And here's a line from the American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Aside from the Garden of Eden, man's great temptation took place when he first received his seed catalog. These next 2 are from the author Catherine White, who was married to the man who wrote Stuart Little. For gardeners, this is the season of lists and callow hopefulness. Hundreds of thousands of bewitched readers are poring over their catalogs, making lists, and dreaming their dreams. I read garden catalogs for news, for driblets of knowledge, for aesthetic pleasure, and at the same time, I'm planning the future. So I read in dream. This next one's from Barbara Kingsolver, the author, from her book, Animal Vegetable Miracle, which was published back in 2007. I have seen women looking at jewelry ads with a misty eye and one hand resting on the heart. And I only know what they're feeling because that's how I read the seed catalogs in January. And then finally, here's a poem from the American writer and poet Carolyn Wells. I don't believe the half I hear, nor the quarter of what I see. But I have one faith sublime and true that nothing can shake or slay. Each spring I firmly believe anew all the seed catalogs say. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Lifelong Gardener by Toni Gattoni. The subtitle to this book is Garden with Ease and Joy at Any Age. And if you haven't checked out Toni Gattoni's videos over at YouTube, you really should because she does an excellent job. Carl Honore, the author of In Praise of Slowness, said this about Toni's book. The secret to making the most of later life is to keep doing what you love. With practical advice and gentle inspiration, Gattoni shows us how gardening can work for people of any age. As a master gardener, Toni teaches people how to garden all the time. And one of the things that she started noticing is that the majority of her students are seniors. And as a senior herself, Toni quickly learned that adaptive gardening is a vital practice for people who want to continue to work in their gardens as they age. As Toni says, my generation, the boomers, don't want to give up the things we love just because we're getting older. Never give up is our motto. My purpose for writing this book is to share what I've learned about how to keep gardening even when your back or knees are screaming at you. And Tony offers 10 adaptive gardening rules to live by right in the beginning of her book. I won't read all 10 of them to you, but I'll share a few to help you get the gist. The first is, one of the best things you can do for your body is stretching before you start gardening. Second, save time and money by planting perennials and shrubs instead of annuals. And then finally, look for ways to make your gardening life easier. Use self-watering containers and buy a tool sharpener. Tony's got lots of great tips in her book. It's The Lifelong Gardener by Tony Gattoni, and you can pick up a copy for yourself using the link in today's show notes. Another item I wanted to share with you is also a great gift for gardeners. It's a woven jute rope plant basket, and it can hold up to a 10-inch flower pot. Rope baskets are so in right now. You can use them with your indoor trees or with succulents. They're very versatile and they're easy to store. This basket has handles on both sides, so you can easily pick it up and move it anywhere you like. And what I love about this one is it's foldable because it's made of cotton and jute, so it makes for easy storage. It's got black and beige stripes, so it's striking. And you can get it using the link in today's show notes and support the show for just $14.99. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today's story of Catherine Parr Traill was really quite something. And I had this adorable story that I ran across that I wanted to share with you at the end of today's show. And I have to warn you, it's a little heartbreaking as well. As I mentioned earlier, Catherine and her husband Thomas faced extraordinary challenges as settlers in the backwoods of Canada. Whatever loveliness or dear possession that they had brought with them from England ended up either being ruined, sold, or lost one by one in their great effort to survive. At one point, the only thing that Catherine had left was her prized possession of silver spoons. They'd been in her family for generations. One day, Catherine realized that all her spoons were gone. Distressed and alarmed, she discovered that her young son, Willie, admitted he had taken them. He had planted them in the garden. When she asked him why, he said he wanted to get more poons. He couldn't say his S's properly. In any case, this caused the entire family to go out into the garden and search, but they never found the silver spoons. But I'm betting that every time Catherine worked in the garden, she was hopeful that she might run across them. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.